Alright then. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just gonna check that this stream is going. Welcome to Breakfast Analysis, if you're watching on YouTube or SoundCloud. And if you're watching on Twitch, then I'm amazed that you've managed to show up so early. Congratulations. But welcome as well. I was going to have breakfast today. Okay, I promise I had breakfast. Right? But so I had a breakfast wrap. Oops. I had a breakfast wrap from just from like the kitchen downstairs. And it was so good. I was prepping right before this show. We're like 12 minutes late. That's okay. Don't worry about it. Because it was a very, very hectic day yesterday and today, and so because of all that, I didn't really have time to prep. So I was prepping today, and I was just mindlessly, like, while I was prepping, I was also eating my breakfast wrap, and I didn't realize that. And then I finished my food, and I realized, man, I'm supposed to save that for the show. So that's why I'm not eating breakfast today. It's a terrible excuse, and I get that, but that's the truth. So I unfortunately can't analyze the breakfast. It was good though, breakfast wrap. I don't know. They kind of use those like fake eggs, or they're not like fake, but they're like, you know, pre-scrambled, right? Or like it's just like the liquid eggs. That's what I'm looking for. It's the liquid eggs, right? So, you know, that's a little bit of a downside, but okay, we are live. Just wanted to double check that. And we can get into the actual show though, because most people actually don't show up to hear about the breakfast, but regardless, we can take a look at last week's rankings. In first place, I had placed Fryotech, because obviously. Second place, Swift, because they did manage to pull out a win over Ascent, and I feel like that deserves them bumping up in the power rankings. Third place, however, sticks with Ascent. Fourth place is still 8K, because their most recent match against Velocity, they did win, so they're going to be put up above Velocity. Velocity's still sitting in 5th place, though, and after that, it's pretty smooth sailing. My Enemy List at 6th, Black Swan at 7th, TF Crew at 8th, Hooligans for Hire at 9th. That seems strange. Again, this is not like necessarily a power rankings as much as it is just like listing the teams based on how they've done in their results. It's not predicting playoffs. It's not meant to say definitively like Running with Scissors is better than Velocity. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Probably depends on the day, honestly. But the day that mattered was the match day, and on that day, Velocity was the worst team, and 8K was on top, so that's why they're on top of my rankings. If we come down to this week's rankings, you will see that nothing has changed. I know, it's boring. We didn't have any upset wins this week, though, and there were a couple matches where, like, because this team was close with this team, maybe you could argue that, like, now they should be above this team, and maybe, but, like, I think if we're trying to keep it objective, we're kind of keep it to match results, then the rankings should not be changing from last week to this week. There were no upsets. There were no reasons to change rankings. A couple close games still. A couple of really close games, and we'll get into that for sure. But I think probably the biggest question mark is Velocity 8K. Just thinking about it now, you could probably justify Velocity being up over 8K. It doesn't really matter at all. As we'll see as we get back down into things, but yeah, that one, if you want to be upset about, fair enough. I can see your point. We'll get into the teams. I do want to mention also that this is probably going to be a much shorter episode than last week's. Last week's was crazy long, but even this week's, I mean, I'm very busy this weekend, so I can't promise that I'll be able to go in depth into absolutely everything. But I still wanted to put this out. I still wanted to do it like at the same time. I could have delayed it like a couple hours and maybe done more prep, but I didn't want to delay it because I've got like a certain time that we're always doing this. Of course, 12 p.m. Mountain, which is 2 p.m. Eastern, every Sunday is what we try to hit. So don't always. Sometimes. Been late before. I'm sure I'll be late again, but that's the goal usually. So our first team is Black Swan that we're going to go into, and we'll take a look at them on ESEA as well. But, yeah, they had a close game against Hooligans for Hire last week, which is a little bit surprising because Hooligans for Hire are supposed to be Darbo. But they actually are turning it up these last few weeks, and I don't think this is on Black Swan's fault. Like, no player on their roster, just looking at these stats at least, had that bad of a game. I mean, their medic did fantastic. Charis, he got 10 deaths compared to 17 from Fabulous. 0 Uber charges dropped, which is good to see. Um, and then like all their players played fairly well. 42 frags from Jinx, 40 from Ninjax, so their scouts going absolutely off. 300 DPM getting dropped by Ether, and then like probably the worst performance on the team was Jay, who only got 24 frags. He went 24 and 36 and 226 DPM, which isn't very. It's not good. It's not great. But it's not bad either, you know. You could have done a whole lot worse, and even the scoreline kind of suggests this. Like, first half was a 3-1, and then it was just a 1-1. So, the fact that it was a 4-2, it kind of just feels like maybe Black Swan are having a bit of trouble closing this match off. And I don't think they should be too worried about these 2 rounds that they dropped to Hooligans for Hire. They kind of Black Swan have been a team where they've gotten no upset wins the entire season, and they've gotten no upset losses. They've been very consistent with like how you would predict them to play. That's kind of interesting because a lot of teams this season definitely have not had the same thing be true about them. So yeah, Black Swan, pretty much what you expect from them, and this week was no different. 4-2 to Hooligans for Hire was maybe a little closer than people were expecting, but then a 5-0 loss to Velocity is pretty much where you would put them right now. Velocity seems to have turned it back up, and we'll talk about this when we get down to them, but you know, beating Black Swan 5-0 certainly says good things for them. And on the side of Black Swan, I mean, their stats are bad, but like when you're getting rolled 5-0 in 34 minutes, like I don't want to look at the stats too long because this is clearly a whole team's problem. Like you can't even get one round. Like you need to, so every member should look over and see what they could have done to improve in a game like that. Obviously, this is against a very good team. They weren't looking to win this one, but a couple of rounds would have been nice, especially since like their first match against Velocity on week 2 on Viaduct week was so close they almost won it. It was a 4-3 match, right? Black Swan almost managed to beat Velocity on Viaduct, and that was like the biggest upset. It wasn't even an upset, but that was still like the closest, most crazy game that we saw early on in the season. So a little unfortunate they weren't able to back it up. I know back then we kind of talked to the players and stuff. They kind of were just like, yeah, it's Viaduct week. Everything's different. Black Swan are just very DM heavy, so they kind of thrive on Viaduct week. But then they lost to AK. I don't know. Regardless, I mean, clearly they couldn't keep that up against Velocity here in week 7. But even throughout the rest of the season, they haven't had phenomenal results against any team, other than maybe Froyotech, but that's a whole another basket of worms we'll open up in a little bit here. But no, last week, Black Swan, exactly how you'd expect it. Same with almost every week for Black Swan. They played how you expected. Coming up next week, they do have kind of a close match against my anime list. And then, as I say back here, they got one more exciting game coming up, and then they're just showing up for the Banny check. Really, yeah, I mean, Ascent versus Swift are their last 2 games. That's going to be a rough time. No way they win those. But their match against my anime list, I don't know. That's like a team that I have them right next to each other in the power rankings, and I seriously believe that. Like I seriously like these bottom 6. I'm like super confident in my rankings. Like this is where the teams lie. The top 5, you could probably switch some people around, and like that would be very fair. But the bottom, did I say bottom 6? I meant bottom 4. These bottom 4, like 6 through 9. Certainly, I would. This is like I feel pretty confident on these rankings. So, Black Swan and Anime, they are right next to each other, but I feel like there's a bit of a gap between 6th and 7th, and I only say that just because, I mean, if you look at the last time these 2 teams played each other, it was on Grand Arena, it was a 5-0. Like, you wouldn't expect these 2 teams to go 5-0 against each other. I want to check like scrim results or something. If I had more time today, I would have done that. But it's interesting that like against other teams, these 2 teams seem to put up similar results more or less. But when they played each other, it was not a close game. So we'll see how next week's game goes. I don't think we're going to be able to stream that one, just because there's a couple more important games going on for playoffs and a couple more exciting games happening. And the fact that the last one was a 5-0, we don't want to cast another one of those if we can avoid it. But still, if somebody streams it, or if you can even just watch the VOD, or watch the STV, I do recommend it, because that's going to be a very interesting game, how it ends up playing out. And then, oh yeah, I was just kind of saying the gap between 6 and 7 I think is pretty apparent. Probably one of the larger gaps we have in the rankings, like obviously other than this one, the one underneath Froyotech and every other team, but no, one of the larger gaps for sure between 6th and 7th. So Black Swan struggling to punch above their weight class, but that's okay. Now we're coming down to Froyotech, and Froyotech's still pretty good. Their matches last week, they only had one, and it was a 5-3 to TF Crew. Froyotech clearly has stopped giving a shit after LAN. Excuse my language, but they clearly have no care at all for what goes on in their team. I mean, their closest game of the season It's tied with their match against Black Swan. But it's like, how are Foritek's two closest matches against TF Crew and Black Swan? Like it should be Ascent, it should be like Velocity, and it's pretty obvious once you actually take a look at the logs and everything. I'll try to get the other matchup as well, because their match against Black Swan tells like a very similar tale. If we open that up here, 3-0 in the first half, and then 3-2 in the second. 3-0 in the first half, 3-2 in the second. So clearly Foritek are steamrolling people in the first half of their games. And then once they just roll people in the second half, they're like, alright, we can let off the gas. Blaze, you can play Huntsman. You know, Shade, you can play Soldier, or whatever he wants to play. Like, excuse me, clearly they're just, they're throwing it away after the first half. Then maybe they let the enemy team get like 3 rounds. And then after that, they're like, okay, guys, we're memeing too hard. We don't actually want to lose this game. Let's step it back into gear. And eventually they pull out some sort of a win. So, I don't know. I don't think these match results say too much against or about Foritek. We can look at their stats, but I mean, I don't know. They played really well. Habib and Banny did a lot of damage. Wow. Who could have saw that coming? I don't know. Habib's like consistently actually hitting more damage and more frags than Banny is these days. Again, it's a 5-3. I mean, Foritek was clearly throwing for a while, so I don't want to look into that too much. Usually Habib's one of the guys who's not like off-classing on Foritek. The guy in this ad makes you uncomfortable. That's great, Moist Master. Your name makes me uncomfortable. But Habib's actually kind of been outshining Banny recently, and again, it's these meme games, so Habib's probably not switching off a demo man. He probably doesn't turn off his his drive to play well, whereas Banny, I could see him letting loose a little bit. Maybe not as much as some of his teammates, but certainly every now and again. So yeah, Foritek, not a whole lot to say. Coming up, though, they do have some interesting games. They have a match against 8K, and they have a match against Velocity. And, of course, these two teams are these are the two teams that are fighting for the final playoff spot right now. And it could end up coming down to rounds 1. So, next week, I really hope Foritek don't pull this kind of garbage where they're just, like, throwing their matches and, like, oh, yeah, sure, TF Crew can get 3 wins or 3 rounds, and Black Swan can get 3 rounds. Because in a game like this, in a situation like this, where both teams need every single round they can get, and they need their opponents to get as few rounds as possible, if you have to play, if like Velocity walk in and they've got to play against like Habib on demo and Yomps on Pocket Soldier, Banny running around on Scout, and then 8K come in and like Blaze is on Huntsman and Shade is on Roamer, like that's not going to be a fair contest at all. And if that ends up being the reason why like one team makes it into playoffs over the other, that'll be really, really shitty, in my opinion. So I hope that doesn't end up happening. I hope they actually can, or Foritek, like, tries, at least for this week. Then, like, the final week, like, they play Hooligans for Hire, which, I don't know, give them 3 or 4 rounds, who cares? And then they play Ascent, which really shouldn't matter for playoffs. So, I don't know, just have fun in that game. Try to destroy them one last time before you head into playoffs and play them again if you can. But next week, I hope Foritek take it seriously, because this could be an important week for them. Not for their own sake, but for the teams they're playing against. Next team we want to talk about, Swift NA. They managed to get their revenge against Velocity. This scoreline right here, this 3-4, is why I probably should have put Velocity higher up in my power rankings. But we're going to keep them where they are. I mean, this 3-4 is very much what they wanted here. Swift had a close couple of games and interesting couple of games. Obviously, the first time they played Velocity was week 3 on Snakewater, and they lost at 3-4. This one, they play them again on Metalworks, and they barely win at 3-4. Neither one going into overtime, weirdly enough. 2, 4, 5, yeah, neither one going into overtime, strangely enough, but still, pulling out the win here, very good for Swift. Not good for Velocity. If Velocity had won this, they would have basically clinched playoffs. Yeah, no, I think they would have clinched playoffs. Not technically, like if Hooligans for Hire pull out a miracle win or something, but realistically, they would have clinched playoffs. So this loss does hurt for Velocity quite a lot. Especially since, you know, they won a lot of rounds in the second half. It kind of looks like they were coming back probably here. So, I don't know, a 50-minute game is very long. We can check the stats on the side of Swift. I mean, 29 frags from bot mode and putting in like just under high fives DPM, 196, very fine. I'm glad bot mode's stepping it up here. I always like talk up bot mode as a player, and then sometimes he drops like 15 frags and like 150 DPM. I'm like, god damn it. Not actually, but I don't know. Sometimes I feel like bot mode should be playing soldier, but he's doing really well on scout. Honestly, this season, bot mode's been putting in the work. It's just a very strange team of people not playing their mains. I mean, Yite, obviously the exact same situation, but still dropping 25 frags, 186 DPM is a little low, especially when your demo man is actually bottom damaging your team. Didn't notice that until just now, but it's not by that much, so we'll let him off with a warning, I guess, in this one. Looking at frags, I mean, the biggest, well, there's a couple of issues for velocity in this one. Starting from the top, Bear had 4 drops. That's quite a lot. Like, usually if you see 1 or 2 drops on a medic, you're like, alright, well, it's probably just some spy or, you know, something they couldn't handle. And usually that's more of a team issue, too, than a medic issue. But 4 times is quite a lot of times. I know I messaged Bear after that, and I was just like, what happened? And he wrote me a nerd essay on why it wasn't his fault, more or less, so... you know, definitely, I'm not going to say it was all him, but that's a team effort, and certainly I feel like he could have done more to help his team out there. Not dropping 4 times certainly would have helped them out. But the rest of his team aren't blameless either. I mean, Jarrett, really bad stat line for this game. Went 13 and 15, so like not a huge difference, but 13 frags compared to the next lowest in the server. I guess AIM only put up 14 frags, but still, then you drop like 150 damage. Like, not what you want from your demo man. It's weird. Both demo mans in this in this game ended up bottom damaging for their team. That's probably something about Metalworks, really, where it's just not so much of a demo map, at least for putting out damage. And yeah, but still, even if it's not your map, 150 DPM is pretty unacceptable. Showstopper seemed to put in the work. The scouts seemed to play fine. Honestly, Midas was like the team MVP, and he was subbing in for Pete. I mean, he top fragged the server. He did a lot. He second damaged his team. Only short to Showstopper, and Showstopper had quite a few fewer frags, so Midas was kind of the MVP of this match, and he literally is like a ringer for them. And Midas's performance, like, this has nothing to do with velocity, because obviously Midas doesn't play on velocity. He subbed in for Pete because Pete is on vacation right now. Pete will be back next week. But shout out to Midas, because he was a garbage tier player. Okay, I don't want to shit talk Midas too much, but he did not play very well last season in Invite. He played on Black Swan. They got 7th. And I looked at the stats. Midas had the 3rd worst overall damage per minute in Invites, not including medics and not including Rando, because Rando only played 2 matches. But if you take out Rando and you take out all the medics, Midas had the 3rd worst damage per minute. So for him to come back and actually have a really good game with velocity, I don't know, how did he play in his other velocity match? Because they had 2 games this week. I don't think I've actually checked it out. What was it? It was a 5-0 against Black Swan, so he didn't really need to put in the work. Yeah, now he's back to his regular damage numbers here, 154, when nobody else on his team was under like 220. So yeah, you know, it's fine. He even last season he did good on frags. I think it's more just his play style, but I thought that was funny that he maybe wasn't really putting up the numbers last season and was able to come back in. So good on him. Pete was clearly not the problem, though, because still velocity not able to pull it out. And, you know, obviously, we don't see it in the stats, but I feel like the team cohesion and team chemistry is, like, really important here. And maybe if they had Pete, just because it was such a close game, this wouldn't have done this. It wouldn't have been a 4-3, but, you know, as much as it sucks to have to lose because somebody goes on vacation or something, like, there's nothing you can do. So there's no point complaining about it. And, obviously, we don't want to discredit Swift at all either. They played very, very well, so congrats to them. 2-0 8K, this was a match kind of cut short with server issues. They didn't manage to play it out completely, so they just called it a 2-0 scoreline. Kind of sucks for 8K because they didn't have any more. They didn't have a lot of chances to get more than 2 rounds. I know it says it was a 52-minute game, but that's just because I think like the server issues just had everything like paused for a long time or something like that. So really unfortunate. They called it a 2-0. You can tell this is gonna be like just hilariously low damage numbers. It's honestly not that bad actually, but I mean some of them are scissors hitting left at 42 damage per minute. Don't look into that at all. That's not an important stat, but still, I mean, unfortunate that AK couldn't get more rounds because that could affect playoffs as well. Certainly, this is one that AK really was looking to win, pull out like an upset if they could against Swift, because that would have made them more than likely to make playoffs if they managed to get that upset, or even just getting a lot of rounds would help them quite a bit. So getting 0 rounds hurts them a lot, but. It just kind of sucks for Swift that they have to not play as much and deal with all these server issues. So, that's lame, but whatever. Oh yeah, they do have a game coming up against Ascent, and this is going to be a really close one next week. This is probably the game of the week next week. It's not currently pending, but we will be covering it on TFTV. So, this should be a really close game. Certainly Ascent are going to want revenge after losing to Swift. Earlier on, I think it was Granary, so already that was week 4, so it was still midway into the season already, but excuse me. That'll be a really close game. I'm hoping Swift are a strange team because it seems like Velocity and Ascent don't have that close of games. I guess they go like 5-3. Yeah, that's kind of how it goes, isn't it? Like Velocity and Ascent, they're sort of 5-3. That's sort of their range. That's sort of how far apart they are. And Swift are right in the middle. They have like 5-4s with both teams, or 3-4s. In some cases, so it's always sort of a 1-round difference between Swift and Ascent, whereas it's always like a 2-round difference between Velocity and Ascent. So I don't know. I like the way the dichotomy is playing out for the second, third, and fourth place teams right now. And assuming these 4 make playoffs, I think it'll be a very exciting playoff season. So really looking forward to that. Speaking of Ascent, they had a pretty boring week this week. They played one team. What was it, Anime? Yeah, they played Anime. It was a 5-1. I mean, what can you say there? Anime is not good enough to challenge Ascent right now. That's not really news to anybody. We can go see who we can jerk off with the stats. 32 frags. It looks like it's going to be Corsa. It's always Corsa, isn't it? 32 frags and 291 DPM. But Donski's up there, 293 DPM, but with only 15 frags. I think we got to give MVP to Corsa. I didn't watch the game, so it's hard to actually give out any MVP awards, but certainly Corsa looked like he played well. And nobody played poorly. I mean, maybe the worst on their team was Marmalou, but Marmalou's playing Roamer in a game where your team's just rolling over everybody. Like, you're basically just running along for the ride at that point, so very well played by Ascent to be able to shut that one down quick. I assume it was quick. I didn't actually look at the time. 35 minutes. Relatively quick. Coming up, they've got some close matches still. Obviously, the game against Swift we just talked about. That'll be a really close one. And then they have Froyotech. Their last match of the season is against Froyotech on Badlands. Ooh, that'll be a way to end out the season. Certainly, that should be an exciting game. They also have matches against Black Swan and TF Crew. If they 5-1 my anime list, they shouldn't be worried about Black Swan or TF Crew in the least. Those are 2 very winnable games. And yeah, more or less they just got to worry about Swift. I think, is a game against Swift going to matter for playoffs? So, Ascent are definitely going to get 12 wins, right, by the end of the season. Swift are definitely going to get 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, so assuming Ascent loses to Froyotech, the winner of this gets 2nd seed, and the loser gets 3rd seed. And it doesn't really matter because regardless, Swift and Ascent will play themselves first round. But since I think we're keeping with the tradition of map picks and bans, so keeping with that, that will matter for that. So basically, the winner of the match next week is going to get map advantage. Or the winner of Sunshine next week is going to get map advantage in the first round of playoffs against the other team. So not a huge deal, but still something to look out for. And it's just kind of a nice ego boost being like, all right, we know we can beat this team. We've beaten them before, or maybe twice before if you're Swift. And certainly will help you out going into playoffs. I know Ascent were not happy with their first loss against Swift. They were having a lot of roster issues. I've heard they fixed those issues that their team were having, and clearly, I mean, last week wasn't really a test, but The issues can't be that bad if they're not falling apart. So they're playing all right so far. And with this 5-1, I feel like they can get back on track. And I'm excited to see how they play for the rest of the season. For sure. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, every week after this is going to be pretty exciting for them. Hooligans for Hire. My favorite low open team. Low open. Low invite. My bad. I don't want to disrespect them like that. They're getting better still, it seems. A 2-4 loss against Black Swan is probably the biggest deal for them all season. They've had a 4-2 before. It's not their closest match. Well, it's tied for their closest match. They had a 4-2 against TF Crew. But the fact that it's against Black Swan means a little bit more. Obviously, Black Swan is a better team than TF Crew. And so hitting the same scoreline against them shows that they are improving. It wasn't that long of a match, actually. It was only 45 minutes compared to their TF Crew game, which was over an hour. So, yeah, no, Hooligans for Hire looking very good here. Vari dropping that fat 50 bomb with the frags. That's very nice stat lines. 50 and 20, dear God. That is a fantastic stat line. Only 218 DPM, but relative to the rest of the server, or the rest of his team, rather, that's not too bad at all. Shiloh's hitting a big 282 damage, which is nice, and 32 frags to back it up. So they've definitely got some good players. It's nice to see it's not just Reflecto either. It seems like in previous weeks when I've looked at this team, it's literally just like Reflecto dragging along 5 players like, we are going to get good. So it's nice to see his teammates putting in the work as well. Obviously, Fabulous dying quite a lot here, and they've had some roster issues already. Hooligans for Hire have had a really rough time this season trying to find a good medic, and I don't know if they found it or not, but they're playing with who they got, I suppose, and I hope it'll work out for them. Certainly, they still have some opportunities. They play TF Crew next week, and I'm actually really excited for this match. A, because it's a rematch of the closest game they've had all season. B, because it's like the bottom 2 teams, and if Hooligans for Hire are ever going to win this season, it's likely going to be this game, okay? And then C, because this is the RGB Grand Finals rematch. I didn't even know that until Console told me like 2 nights ago. But yeah, this is like the rematch. This is a LAN Finals rematch, and on that one, TF Crew won, but it was very close. I think it was a best of 3 was the Grand Finals, and it was 2 maps, but each map was within 1 round of each other, or maybe like one of them was within 2 rounds of each of the other team. So these teams very close in skill, and LAN is a different environment as well. So I think Hooligans for Hire have a good opportunity to take this one. I know they want to end the season on a high note, and that will be a high note. Like week 9, basically, they're just showing up so that they can collect the Banny check. Because it's against Froyotech and then 8K, like, they don't have a chance, let's be real here, in week 9. So Hooligans for Hire, next week they play Swift, which again, they don't have a chance, but TF Crew is the one game where they have a chance still, and they should be looking towards that one, because, I don't know, I could see a win for them here. Honestly, I'm pulling for them, because, I really, again, I like their attitude. I talked a lot about this at the beginning of the season, but I really like their attitude to, compete and to get better and grow as a team. And I think that should be rewarded because they clearly have been growing as a team. I mean, I just closed their match page. I don't know why. Here we go. They clearly have been growing. I mean, I kind of talked about this last week, but like they did have a 5-0 against Ascent, but otherwise it's been a lot of like, they're getting rounds now. And this 4-2 against Black Swan probably highlights that the best because their first match against Black Swan was a 5-0, and now they play them, it's a 4-2. So good to see improvement from Hooligans for Hire, even if they're not making playoffs anytime soon. My anime lists have been a very strange team to like pin down what they're doing. If Black Swan was predictable, like my anime list is anything but. They're not doing like crazy upsets. They're not like beating Ascent anytime soon. But they're really like they have close games against the weirdest teams. They had they almost beat Velocity on Gully Wash. They almost beat 8K, so you're like, all right, they're like in the same squadron as these teams maybe, but then like, I don't know, if you go back far enough, like they're getting rolled by Swift, they're getting rolled by Velocity in week 2, so I don't know, maybe They're better than we're giving them credit for. They play Black Swan next week, which again, this one could be good, but I feel like the gap between 6th and 7th is 6th and 7th is quite a large one. So I'm not actually confident that that'll be a close game. It'll be an interesting game. Why do I have Hooligans for Hire twice here? I'm not sure. Okay. Regardless, I think that this will be an interesting game to see the results for. But I don't think we're going to cast it on Team Fortress TV. We'll see how it ends up playing out for them. Then they play TF Crew and Swift. So their close games are kind of over. Like, honestly, Gully Wash was a very, very close week for them. And Wild Rumpus says in the chat, maybe they're just a Gully Wash team. That can be true too. I think once you get like the higher levels of TF2, like map dependency doesn't become as important because teams are kind of good on all the maps. But even at the highest level, teams definitely have preference for like some maps over others. And Gully Wash can be a weird one as well, where like holding last is, or pushing last rather, can be quite a challenge. So if you're really good at that or really good at defending, you can really throw a wrench in some teams' plans. But I mean, if I don't want to go too much into Gully Wash week because I already did this episode, but both of them were 4-0, or sorry, this was a 4-0 comeback and this was a 3-0 comeback. So in both of them, Anime was like 1 round away or 2 rounds away from victory, and then they just lost everything, got slammed back. I honestly feel bad. Both of them went to overtime. Oh, that's got to be so destroying for their mentality. But, they're going to play out the rest of the season. I don't expect too much interesting coming out from this team anymore. But the first half of the season was certainly something to watch. Now, I'm not sure why I have Hooligans for Hire twice. Let me count these teams up right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Uh-oh, I missed a team then. Who did I miss? Well, we'll just do them at the end, I guess. Hooligans for Hire. I think this one's... Oh, we missed TF Crew. I didn't miss them. I just labeled them wrong. One of these notes is for Hooligans. Yeah. These notes are supposed to be for TF Crew. So we're going to take a look at TF Crew now. Excuse me, I'm just a mess. TF Crew last week, a 5-0 loss to Running with Scissors and the 3-5 loss to Fryotech. Again, I don't think these Fryotech matches you can put too much stock into. Certainly I want to give credit to TF Crew because even when Fryotech is like off-classing and like throwing memes around, they're the best players in the world, so to be able to still stand up to them is quite impressive, and I think they should be proud of getting the 3 rounds they did get. However, I didn't watch the match because it's Fryotech versus TF Crew. I don't know who would watch that, but I assume that Fryotech were not taking it that seriously after the first half. Because this is not how Rewind Grand Champions perform, and even in the Rewind Grand Finals, we saw them kind of letting loose, like in their third map and like the last 2 rounds against Ascent. Fryotech were really letting loose, and I think since LAN, Fryotech have had this like a way different mentality. Like you can kind of see it in their stats. Before LAN, it's like 5-1, but then 5-0, 4-0, 4-0, 5-2, 5-0, 5-0, right? It's just like you are destroying every team, every match, you're in at 100%. And then after LAN, it's like 5-1, 5-1, 5-3, 5-2, 5-3. And these 5-1s, like before they go to 5-1, it was against like, okay, Animalist was good earlier on, like 8K was a very good team. And now they're like, dropping 3 rounds to Black Swan, dropping 3 rounds to TF Crew. It's like, really, you heard Banny was livid after losing 3 rounds to TF Crew? I can believe it, honestly. Like, Banny has historically been a very serious player who's been very anti, like, off-classing and stuff. Especially since, isn't he, like, paying people not to, like, off-class and throw games? So for his own team to do it, that's kind of, questionable. But, I mean, I still don't think that Fryotech need to be worried after losing 3 rounds. Maybe TF Crew's the sleeper team, and they're about to come out and, like, destroy their last 4 matches. But I don't know. I'm not super confident about that. I don't think you can put a whole lot of stock into that. And I think that TF Crew going forward, again, they've got their close match against Hooligans for Hire. That'll be the one to watch. They're obviously not going to want to lose it. Put up the big challenge they can for Hooligans for Hire. Definitely the biggest rivalry, or their biggest rivals in invites. TF Crew is Hooligans for Hire. And they're both really cool teams, full of really cool people. So I hope that they both win. But I don't know how the odds are for that. So overall, it'll be nice for Hooligans for Hire to pick up a win, but TF Crew definitely, if they can play better and deserve it, then all power to them. Then their last week doesn't look too great. Ascent to my anime list. My anime list, maybe they can pull out a win. That's like a kind of a stretch. I don't really see that actually happening. When they first played my anime list, it was a 5-1 on process. So maybe if TF Crew pull out something amazing, but no, they're probably looking for one more win against Hooligans for Hire, and then ending off their season going 2-14. All right, now that we've sorted this whole mess out. Velocity Esports, so they lose to Swift, okay, and that's a loss they don't want to be losing. Some of their players play really bad and like just have really bad games, and mentality's pretty low probably, so that sucks. They come out, they beat Black Swan 5-0. I mean, grats to them on that. That's definitely a boost to their mentality, but still it's Black Swan, so they're not going to put too much stock into it. And now they have some work to do still. I think Velocity, after this week, Velocity's chances of playoffs have gotten much better. It's not impossible for them to get kicked out, but I think it's looking very likely at this point. Velocity will be your fourth and final playoff member. That's kind of what we expected from the beginning, obviously. But things were definitely looking rocky in sort of that middle season, like right after LAN. Especially like losing to 8K. That was before LAN actually, but like they're literally their last match before LAN, losing 3-2 to 8K, and then just going really close with some really strange teams, like my anime list, having a 4-3 with them. We kind of just talked about that, but you know, some questionable things happening. Then they come back, and you know, now they're playing against top teams, and they're still doing well. They're not winning, but they're definitely performing better than they were kind of around Rewind's time. So I'm hoping they've picked it back up. A 4-3 against Ascent, or sorry, a 5-3 against Ascent and a 4-3 against Swift. They're at least close, and as long as they still make playoffs, it shouldn't matter that these games are losses but close. The fact that they're close is more important than the fact that they're losses, right? Because that means these teams are still beatable. Obviously, they've beaten Swift before. Ascent are a team that are very good and going to be tough to beat, but Velocity have clearly taken rounds off them, so a win is not that far off for them. Coming up, they've got a match against TF Crew, which should be a win where they get 5 rounds. A match against Froyotech, which should be a loss where they get X amount of rounds. And then a match against 8K, which, who knows, that probably will be, like, last week, honestly, Badlands week is going to be fantastic. Because we've got Velocity versus 8K, which could be the match that decides who makes that 4th spot, by the way. And then we've already gone over Froyotech and Ascent, so Froyotech versus Ascent is another Badlands, like, last match of the season, so it's a lot of really good, like, we're going to end this regular season on a bang, so I'm really excited for that. But as for next week, Velocity, not looking too exciting. It'll definitely be their lesser 2 exciting matches of the other 3 they play, but still important nonetheless. You know, how many rounds they can get against Froyotech is going to mean a lot. If we compare with 8K, because 8K is the next team that we're looking at. If we compare with Running with Scissors, right? So Velocity right now are 8-5. They're gonna beat TF Crew, which is gonna make them 9-5. And that's where we'll put them, right? They're 9-5. Running with Scissors then are going to be, they're 7-6, or not 9-5, but you get what I mean. Velocity are going to have 9 wins. So they're 7-6. They're going to beat Hooligans for Hire on Badlands week. So they're going to be at least at 8, and then if they beat Velocity, they'll be at 9. So if they beat Velocity a second time, they'll tie Velocity in wins, assuming neither of them upset Froyotech, which is a given. And then it'll go to rounds, and honestly, if we take a look at rounds, right now Velocity is 47 and 8K has 38. That's a difference of 9 rounds that basically Running with Scissors don't have time to make up. Like, Velocity, 8K, in order to make playoffs, they need to either upset Froyo, or they need TF Crew to upset Velocity, or they need Velocity to just literally, like, win their games by forfeit, or just like have very low scoring games, because otherwise, even if they beat them, they'll still only tie them in wins, and they're so far behind in rounds that it's going to be so tough. AK needs to beat Velocity to make playoffs. They need to do more than beat them. They need to beat them, and they need Velocity to do really poorly in their other 3 games. A 9-round differential in 3 games is doable, but in 3 games where one of them both teams are going to win, one of them both teams are going to lose, there's only really one game where like you're going to have that opportunity, and you only get 5 rounds in a game. And then yeah, if 8K 5-0 Velocity, that makes up 5 rounds, and then like get 4 rounds on Fryotech, and Fryotech 5-0 5-0 Velocity. If 8K can pull all that off, then they'll make playoffs, but otherwise, I think it's pretty safe to call Velocity making playoffs. It's not in the bag for them just yet. There's still some paths they gotta look out for, but I think they can kind of relax right now and focus on their strats against the other playoff teams. They played very good this season. AK really picked it up. Saigai's incredible. Who didn't know that, though? And yeah, that's kind of why I say this. The server issues, their matches against Swift was like really shitty. Because if they'd played it for a little bit longer and managed to get more than 0 rounds, this could be a completely different story where like beating Velocity would actually get them into playoffs, but not how she goes. And I don't know. There's nothing we can really do other than say that sucks. And yeah, so I think that's every team we've gone over then. I still managed to almost stretch this into an hour. I was worried this video was going to be like 15 minutes or something, but no, it was good here. Kind of last minute from me, but I hope everybody still enjoyed. You'd argue AK played poorly? Really? When? I mean, they didn't beat Swift or anything. We're going to extend this a little bit more. I don't know about that. 8K is a very old team. Like, these players, yeah, I mean, you recognize the name 8K, but, like, even when they played an invite back in the day, they weren't that good. Like, I feel like people definitely estimated 8K at the beginning of the season. Like, they have a lot of experience on their team, especially with, like, Saigai and, like, Muffins is really good, and Scissor, and, like, these players are good, but, like, what... And they have been playing in IM and stuff, and I get that, and I really do, but, like, still, that doesn't really compare to the invite experience that a lot of these top teams you should have. Their Gully Wash win. Their Gully Wash. Wait, what? That Gully should have been an easy win for 8K. They won both their Gully Wash games. I don't know what you're talking about. They played Anime and Black Swan. Do you mean against Anime that it should have been like a more role of a roster? I definitely wouldn't say that. Honestly, the beginning of the season, I put Anime List above 8K because like 8K have not played. Like when did they last play? They played season 22. That was a long time ago. These players came back from the dead, some of them. Some of them, again, were playing in IM. But, like, I think Sky is one of the players where she was, like... Okay, she played season 24. That's, like, a year ago. Recurso's been playing. And they had some roster issues as well. Like, they had to bring Dingo in. They had Sandblast at the beginning of the season. I don't know. I would disagree with the fact that AK played less than expected. I think they played far and above how they were expected to place. Maybe not far and above, but certainly better than expected. Beating Velocity is certainly the highlight of their season. Like, this is a game that should have gotten Velocity's, like, 10 out of 10. And then they come out here and they actually managed to beat Velocity. So this is the main reason why I say they had a better season than expected, was their match against Velocity. And then, you know, just being consistent against teams that they should beat, they were beating. Did they have a close game against... Well... No, they might have had a close game against Swift. We didn't get to see it. You thought Dingo wasn't playing? No, Dingo's playing. Dingo's been playing for a little while now. I think half the season at least. Yeah, Dingo played that match. Dingo played this match. Yeah, Dingo's been playing. So... Yeah, it was a decent season for AK in my opinion, and it's not over for them yet, obviously. Their rematch against Velocity, even if it doesn't matter for playoffs, I think that'll be a fun game just to watch and see how it goes, because neither team can throw if they want that banny check, once again. But thank you guys for watching the analysis here, and as always, I think later tonight, if you want to watch more stuff, you're watching live right now, we do have the Essentials tournaments happening. When even is that starting? I should probably know this. It's starting in 3 hours. 3 hours and 2 minutes. So be sure to go check that out. Me and Mela are going to be casting that last couple of games, grand finals and stuff. So that should be exciting. And yeah, the next week we have some very interesting games going on. Be sure to check those out, and we will see you next time.